Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and today we're going to be talking about the best units for each faction in Total War Warhammer 3 competitive. So we're going to go through every single roster, and I'll give you what I think is the best unit for that roster, explain why, of course, and for some rosters, we might actually have a couple units tied for that position because it was just a little bit too tough to decide. But regardless, let's get started and have some fun. Greenskins are first up on the docket, and I do think that the best unit for the Greenskins is the Humble Squig Herd. So these guys used to cost 300 gold, and that was pretty obscene. Now they cost 400 gold, but I find that they're pretty much used in every single matchup and are so defining in so many matchups. So you're playing against Cathay, against Dwarves, against Chaos, like anyone that's going to be presenting any sort of armor, whether it be on infantry or cav, these guys just do so much work and are so cheap and so damn effective. Yes, they are an anti-infantry unit, but if you stack them with like your boys, for example, or even some goblins and have them fighting like Empire Knights or cav equivalents, they can actually do some respectable armor-piercing damage. They do have the Feral Rage, which isn't that big of an issue with them. You know, if they take some damage, they're going to rampage, but it's okay. And they do also have Squigs Gone Wild. Squigs Gone Wild. What have I got? Okay, that's a subject for another day, but Squigs Go Wild, which gives them leadership as well. So it gives them plus 12 when they're in their rumbling, which is quite good. So yeah, these little guys, they just put in a ton of work, and I really think are the glue. I wouldn't say the glue that holds together the roster. Greenskins have a fair amount of good units. Their baseline infantry are pretty good. They have some of the best cav in the game with the Boar Boys, and that's definitely an honorable mention, would be the Boar Boys and the Boar Boy Biggins for like the next best units on the roster. But yeah, the Squigs just super money, and if you guys are getting into Greenskins, get into the game, don't leave home without these guys. I mean, there are maybe a few matchups, like a couple, where you don't use them, but generally they're used almost across the board, and they get some serious work done. So now we're over to the realm of the Dark Prince. It is going to be Slaanesh. And for Slaanesh, the best unit is, we've come full circle, ladies and gentlemen. It is the dreaded Hellstrider. And I would say the anti-large Hellstrider. The Scourge Hellstrider is good, but the anti-large variant is just so solid. And this unit has a complicated history. When it first came out, it was disgustingly overpowered and pretty much dominated the meta. Now it got nerfed super heavily. It got like a fat nerf hammer, which at the time it needed. And then it got like a tiny little buff, like kind of like maybe a quarter or halfway back to what it was before. And it's in a really sweet spot now. And it's just such a solid unit in domination mode. It's a format where, of course, you have to contest the field, have to play multiple objectives, and having a cheap Vanguard 100-speed unit with anti-large and poison and a bunch of good abilities, ITP, you guys get it. They just put in so much freaking work and are a staple in, like, you'll see when we get to the Warriors of Chaos, but they're so good. If you took Hellstriders to Slaanesh off the Warriors of Chaos roster, they would like drop down an entire tier. They would go from being like an A tier faction to like a B- or something. Like, they seriously are that good. But like playing against Hellstriders, they don't feel broken to me. They feel like a unit that requires a lot of micro, good decision making, but in the hands of good players, like you've been seeing, folks like Anticity do super well with them, they can do a lot of work. So the Hellstrider, in my opinion, is the best unit. So now over to the Wood Elves. So for the Wood Elves, it's a faction I don't play super often, so I got some feedback on this. Tim the Wilder believes that the Poison Glade Guard are one of the best units. So those, of course, are the Glade Guard Hagbane tips. And yeah, a lot of good utility against any demon factions, of course. They do have the magical attacks, and poison are very cost effective. They can fire while moving, and are just a nice anchor piece in the back line, so I can totally see where he's coming from. For me personally, I would say that I think that the Dryad is the best unit. I feel like Dryads are almost ubiquitously used. They have excellent killing power. They're obviously ITP, Vanguard deployment, physical resist. So my bet would be with the Dryad, but again, my knowledge of Wood Elves isn't that great, so we did defer to some other folks here. But yeah, Dryads, I think, and I can totally agree with the Glade Guard being very good. All the Glade Guard variants are pretty solid, but I think the Poison and the Starfire Shafts are definitely the MVPs. But we'll call this one a tie. Dryads and the Starfire Shafts. So there you have it. Next up, we're going to be heading to the realm of the Changer. So for the forces of Tzeentch, one of the units that has been making a bit of a splash in the meta the past couple months. Although I've seen it coming and going, but I did talk to some high-level Tzeentch players, and they believe that the Sour Guts is one of the best units. So the Sour Guts is the ROR Pink Horror. Now, Pink Horrors are a good unit. They have a lot of utility and a ton of matchups. It's basically your Archer versus Tzeentch, but how do you normally kill Archers? Okay. You ride them down with heavy cav or furies, whatever. But the Pink Horror ROR has a good stat line at 2934 with a model count of 80, and also has the Sour Discharge ability. So basically, when one of these models gets killed, it explodes and does a substantial amount of armor piercing to the unit attacking it. So that's actually really good. Like if you send like an expensive 1250 cav unit like Knights of the Black Rose, Blazing Suns, Winged Lancers into these guys, they're going to take a lot of damage from the exploding sour guts. So I can totally see how those guys can be really, really good. And yeah, they are no joke. So next up, we're going to be heading to the realm of Norsca. And for Norsca, the best unit is going to be the Humble Frostwolf. And yeah, for me, it's kind of like in between the Skin Wolf. The Norscan Ice Troll used to be pretty good, but it's kind of fallen off since it got nerfed a little bit, but still is very good. And the Frostwolf. Frostwolves are just so solid. Very much like Fleshhounds, but of course having Frostbite is really, really good. These bad boys can just snare things and really change the... Norsca's a faction that's really good at trapping you. If you overextend in a Norsca with like a cav unit and they start nibbling on you with one of these darn Frostwolves, who are also respectable fighters with almost 50 weapon strength, they'll Frostbite you down, 30% speed debuff, nibble at you as you try and retreat, 95 speed. Really just a game changer. That slow is very, very good, and they can help you control the battlefield so much, which is really nice for a faction that doesn't have traditional artillery or heavy-duty shooting. Although the Norscan shooting is pretty decent with some of the throwing weapons. But yeah, the Norscan Ice Wolf is going to be the best unit here. Now for the High Elves, the best unit is of course going to be the Illyrian Reavers. Now light cav are extremely meta. Kislev is spamming out dervishes. We see the Hellstriders on Slaanesh, right? The Wood Elves are often spamming Glade Riders. Glade Riders are a very good unit, but the High Elves do it very well. The Illyrian Reavers at a price point of 550 with Vanguard deployment and an insane stat line for a light cav unit, right? They get plus 12 melee defense, which is going to put them up to 38 melee defense, and then they're at 32 melee attack, which is a crazy good stat line. Super, super high speed as well at 92. I think that they're a really game-changing unit for the High Elves and get a lot of work done. So yeah, some of the better light cav in the game for sure. So those are going to be the Reavers. Now for the Warriors of Chaos, not the most exciting best unit, but the best unit for the Warriors of Chaos. There's a couple. We'll give it a two-way tie here. I think number one, Hellstriders of Slaanesh. These guys are just, without, like I said earlier, without the Hellstriders of Slaanesh, the Warriors of Chaos would just be like a whole tier of units down. They are so good, provide so much utility in domination mode, and just always like get crazy value, help you steal objectives and control flanks. Because without Hellstriders, like what mobile anti-large does Warriors of Chaos get? They get freaking haggard-ass Dragon Ogres. Granted, I think if you took away the Hellstriders, you'd probably start seeing another unit which isn't originally on the Warriors of Chaos unit roster being used, which is the Rot Knight. But yeah, these guys just put in so much work. But the other units, there's a couple on Warriors of Chaos that I think deserve mentions as well. Blood Beasts are very, very good. And again, they're like a Khorne unit. But if we had to go for like a purely Chaos unit that isn't on any other rosters, we'd probably do the Armored Chaos Troll or the Aspiring Champion. Aspiring Champions are very good because they... because like they're not vulnerable to a lot of things that infantry usually suffer, like breath attacks, certain magical vortexes and wind spells like Burning Head. They have high armor. They have 5 capture weight with 16 models, which means it's incredibly hard to remove that capture weight. You see a Marauder or Chaos Warrior, you take them down to half health, they're going to have 2.5 capture weight. But these guys, like, each of the individual models has so much damn HP that it's really hard to get rid of that capture weight. And they're so good at that grindy playstyle. So I would say the Aspiring Champion is just super good and super underrated. So that's going to be my... if we're choosing a unit that isn't borrowed from another roster, probably the Aspiring Champion these days. I think they're so darn good. So next up, we're going to be going on over to the Lizardmen. So the Lizardmen are going to have one best unit and an honorable mention. So for the dinosaurs, for the children of the old ones, the best unit is going to be the Skink cohort with the Javelin. Those guys just put in so much work. In domination mode, having a 48 movement speed infantry piece that can also provide good range DPS and just get to that objective, provide that 5 capture weight is so clutch. And honestly, so many Lizardman games are won by these little gremlins. Like they just move up, they get the objective, or they torpedo something on the objective, like kill some Cryptors or Corpse Cart, whatever. And then they run up and get it and do work. At 450, they're an absolute steal. And the Skink cohort with Javelins, for sure, I would agree is the best unit on the roster. And the honorable mention actually is going to be coming in from, I believe it was Bob, that builder, who gave me this. It was the Shredder of Lestria, which is cool. It's one of the few monsters in tandem with the Camarine War Sphinx, which is just like S tier, right? It's very good. In some matchups, like the Shredder of Lestria is just like doom has come. Tremble mortals, doom has come. So we got to throw our boy the Shredder here. I think he deserves a little bit of a shout out there. So for the Tomb Kings, it's got to be the Camarine War Sphinx. The Camarine War Sphinx is a monster that needs to be nerfed. It's a little bit overtuned. I think it has to do with its attack animations and the fact that it has a Howdah. But honestly, the Camarine War Sphinx could probably get a 200 gold cost increase, and then it would be in a sweet spot. But it is just such a when people discovered how like nasty the double Khemrian War Sphinx was, like you just saw the Tomb Kings go from like a mid tier faction to just like boom. And it of course was something that came in tandem with the impact hits changes. They just did do so much work. Khemrian War Sphinxes are so powerful. They dominate infantry. They're pretty good against SEs. They have like a bit of a strange hitbox that they're hard to shoot as well. Just a nasty game-changing monster that is extremely meta-defining. And there's really no other candidate. I think the Ushabti Great Bows could be a candidate as well if we're really kind of, picking here. But overall, the Khemrian War Sphinx is hands down the dominator and the best unit on the Tomb Kings roster. So next we're going to be heading over to our stinky little rat friends. We're going to be talking Skaven. So for the Skaven, for me, I think I have to go with there's going to be two here. It's going to be the humble clan rat. So clan rats, and we'll just kind of include all their variants here. They really, 160 models, a fairly high HP pool, really good at swarming the battlefield, and they are what is the most essential unit to the Skaven roster. Just having a brick of as many clan rats as the army limits allow you to bring, followed up by like a couple weapons teams, is what wins Skaven's games. The other unit we're going to be including is going to be the Poison Wind Globadier. That one, some people might say like the ROR Jezzails and whatnot, but Poison Wind Globadiers are one of the Skaven's best tools at dealing with like their clan rats being bullied. Because normally the clan rats and Skaven slaves get bullied, but when the Poison Wind Globadiers roll up on the block, like that changes real quick. Things get serious, and they're great at killing infantry, cav. Not so super good against SEs, but they're really just good at pushing front lines and synergize quite well with Skaven, crappy front lines, which is quite great. So for Bretonnia, it's going to be next up. We are going to be choosing the Knights of the Realm. Knights of the Realm are just old faithful, man. They've been good since the days of old. Solid anti-large unit. They do have 37 weapon strength with a bonus for charge of 12, but they also have good enough stats with a charge bonus of 65 and 32 melee attack that they're good against infantry too. So Knights of the Realm, a very solid unit that can come in, can be useful in anti-large fights, against enemy cav, against monsters, and is quite respectable against infantry with that charge bonus. So yeah, don't sleep on these guys. Knights of the Realm are quite good. So next up, we have the Blood God, Khorne. Now, Khorne coming off some goodies, but I think the one unit that people are really dreading these days, Khorngors are very good and would probably be a runner-up, but I think that it's the Wrathmonger ROR. Bloodwake Berserkers are just like, we went from Nurgle being favored against Khorne to just tremble mortals in despair. Vampire counts are trembling, Nurgle's trembling, pretty much any faction that's going to be, wanting to fight you with melee units is going to be trembling in their boots. The Wrathmongers are strong for all the same reasons we mentioned about the Aspiring Champions earlier. Low model count, difficult to reduce their DPS. They're not vulnerable against, things like Buna, but even if Buna were good against them, I guess it wouldn't be terrible at 32 models. But they also have spell resist, right? They have spell resist of 35%. They have the Bloodstorm ability, where when they die, they actually explode and do a ton of damage. So if you're sending elite infantry to fight them, they do good work there. They're just the Terminators, and they basically kill everything, like infantry, cav, single entities. Like if you put like a Great Unclean One against these guys, or Nurgle Chosen, or let's say Knights of the Black Rose, or Demogryph Knights with Lances, like anything, the Wrathmongers are going to take anything to pound town into melee, and are just so hard to get rid of. They have 95 base leadership too, to boot, right? Just nasty unit. So next up, we're heading on over to the Dork Elves, the Druki, and I think the best unit on the Dark Elves is going to be the Coldwind Knights. Coldwind Knights are solid. There's a lot of factions that like to utilize cav, right? You have, Kislev, you have the Empire, you have Bretonnia. Many of the Chaos factions like to bring in cav, whether it be Hellstriders or Chaos Knights. And Coldwind Knights mitigate all those threats and are very good against them. They have good armor, they're shielded. They, of course, have an excellent anti-large bonus, good leadership, and they also benefit from Murderous Prowess, and they have Primal Instincts. So that gives them physical resist as well as melee attack, and they cause fear. So yeah, Coldwind Knights, a very good unit, a staple for the Dark Elves. Dark Elves, of course, like to use their Dark Shards and various mobile missile pieces like Dark Riders and Medusas. And the Coldwind Knights are the guardian. They're like the sheep. They're like the sheepdog that protects the herd. So that is going to be the Coldwind Knight. So for the Beastmen, it's very easy. What's the one unit that you see like 8 of in every single matchup? It's the Centaur. And we're going to include just all the Centaur variants here. They are so freaking annoying. Centaurs can be brought in freaking droves. And at 750, dude, such a steal. Incredibly fast. They have Primal Fury and Rowdy, which gives them pure perfect vigor if their leadership is higher than Wavering. Perfect Vigor is so freaking good. Now that you guys can actually see the illustration of like units suffering stat losses when they're tired and Centaurs are just cackling and running all over you the whole game, dude, they trade well into like almost everything. And you have a Centaur for every problem. You need to deal with light threats. You have the shielded Centaurs or archers. You need to deal with armor. You have the great weapons. You need to deal with monsters. You have the throwing weapons. And like they are just brutal. And they have separate limits too, I think. So yeah, you can bring 4 regular Centaurs, and then the Centaurs with great weapons you can also bring 4 of as well. And then you can also bring a bunch of the throwing axes. And it's just so foul. They're so cost effective and so mobile and so hard hitting. That's why Beastmen are, one of the most dominant factions in the game. So next, we're going to be heading over to my beloved Dawizar, and I think that the best unit on the Dawizar that I've been bringing in almost every single matchup is the Iron Demon. Now, Iron Demons do have their vulnerabilities against SEs, but they're mobile, they're elusive, they cause terror, they destroy infantry, they're respectable against cav, and really, really tough to remove with 120 armor. So yeah, the Iron Demons are a staple for Chaos Dwarfs, because the meta for Chaos Dwarfs is very much like get up on one objective, value trade, and then in the late game, you need to push your opponent off the other 2 objectives to try and catch up on points. And Iron Demons are what does that. They are your mid-game call-ins that you just use to steamroll shit off objectives and just get the job done. Their DPS is great. They cause terror. They firewall moving. So even on the run, they can be doing DPS. And yeah, they're just so freaking good. I love the Iron Demon. Unironically, they're actually they're the best unit for Chaos Dwarfs in tabletop too. In the old world, Iron Demons are just such a hard carry unit, and they perform very similar, which is kind of cool to see that translated. So for the Vampire Counts, we have a two-way tie here. So I think that the best units for the Vampire Counts is the Humble Zombie #1. So zombies are a freaking great unit. For 500 gold, you can summon out 5 zombies. And that's 10 capture weight for 500 gold, which is really, really cost effective, right? Skaven, to get 10 capture weight, you have to present 600 gold with clan rats. So that's incredibly solid, right? And on top of that, zombies have friggin' over 10,000 HP. So talk about great. And they benefit so well from the corpse cart things. Having a corpse cart with zombies is going to put their stats up. It's going to give them vigor, just all sorts of goodies. Zombies are brought in every single matchup. They're very, very cost effective. And sure, they don't always get their value back, but what they bring to the table in tar pitting with 12,000, like a unit of zombies has more HP than a Nurgle chosen, right? I mean, of course, the armor and the defenses, like, I mean, they're nowhere near as tanky, but like for what you're paying for them, dude, and that amount of HP, dude, sign me the hell up. So the other best unit is going to be the Cryptor. Cryptors are so good. They're good against monsters. They're good against infantry, good against cav units. They regenerate. They have good armor piercing. They have poison. Dude, it's great. So yeah, Cryptors and zombies are pretty much brought in every single matchup, right? So I think that those are the best units on the roster. So next up, we're going to be heading on over to Kislev for Urson. And I think for Kislev, we're going to call it like a two-way tie between their infantry units. I think that the Kislevite Warrior, the 525 Halberd, and the Armored Kossars are very good. Kislevite Warrior is basically an unbreakable Halberd unit that has a pretty decent stat line at almost 40 melee defense. And then the Armored Kossars, a really, really tanky frontliner with high armor, great combat stats, and hybrid shooting, which can do brutal utility damage against light, big targets. And, against any number of targets, really. So I think that for Kislev, their infantry are their backbone with the Kislevite Warrior and the Armored Kossar. And these guys just do a lot of heavy lifting and I think deserve the call. It's close, though. The Dervish is also a contender. I think that you could maybe argue one of the cav units like the Winged Lancers could maybe be up there, or like the Oath Brothers. But I do think at the end of the day, the Kislevite Warriors and the Armored Kossars, you don't leave home without them, right? They're just so damn good. And now for the Ogre Kingdoms, which you almost never see anymore because they're so busted with some of these units. But it's very clear. The Thunder Tusk is banned out in tournaments, not because it's bugged per se. It's just so egregiously overpowered that it just crushes it. And it has to be their best unit. The Thunder Tusk, if it were left in its current state, it should cost 3,000 gold instead of 2,300, and it should be limited to 1. It needs to be kind of in a similar territory to like the Shredder of Lustria, which honestly costs like 3,700. The thing is, you look at it and you're like, it has crazy good combat stats in terms of its anti-infantry and its melee, but it has a snowball attack which wrecks skirmishers and infantry and cav, and it has an attack that isn't even listed on its profile. It has an Ogre Hunter riding on top, throwing anti-large javelins. So monsters like this typically are supposed to lose to other monsters like Vargulfs or, Terrorgeist. But the problem with the Thunder Tusk is while it's fighting you in melee, let's say you're attacking it with the Vargeist, or a Terrorgeist, excuse me, it's going to be throwing anti-large javelins at you and accruing an obscene amount of value. And if you match this with the recently buffed Ogres getting the Meat Feast healing ability and Troll Guts, they're like impossible to kill. It's super disgusting. So Thunder Tusks are hands down the best unit on the Ogre Kingdoms roster. So next we're going to go to Grand Cathay, and their best unit isn't going to be the most exciting thing in the world, but it's going to be the Humble Jade Warrior. The Shielded Jade Warrior at 550 is a really good infantry unit. They have a decent stat line at 24, 34, 28. And when they get Harmony, they're going to be getting even more, up to +8 leadership, +8 melee defense, and +8 melee attack, which is really easy to do. There's a number of ways to do it between Crowmen and some of the monsters and range units they have. Jade Warriors are an amazing infantry unit, and they really, really hold the roster together. Not that they have great killing power. That is the one thing Cathay really needs. They just need killing power in melee. But yeah, Jade Warriors, super, super good unit. So next we're going to be heading over to the Dawe. And for the Dwarves, the best unit, and as it has been, I think in like the past 3 or 4 videos we've done, is going to be the Miner with blasting charges. These guys are so menacing, and they are the reason why Dwarves are favored in so many matchups. I mean, Dwarves have their bad matchups, but the matchups they're favored in are usually because of this guy. Because the enemy faction has to present a front line, which is lightly armored, in the infantry department, and they just get karate chopped, right? They just like, and miners, like, even outside of the blasting charges, are not bad. They do have Vanguard deployment, which is really good in domination. They have 80 armor, decent leadership for how cheap they are. But yeah, the blasting charges just clear business up, and they do some serious, serious work. So next we're going to be heading over to the Vampire Coast. So Vampire Coast, their best unit, we're just going to kind of have the trifecta of these units here. It's the handgun mob, the pistol mob, and the bomber mob. Kind of their ranged support zombie mobs are really powerful. The pistol mobs, they of course have Vanguard deployment. They can put respectable DPS down into bigger light targets. The bomber mobs, much like the Miner with blasting charges, are the reason why Vampire Coast is favored against factions like Greenskins and Skaven. It's because they just annihilate lightly armored front lines. And the handgun mobs are pretty damn good. After the buffs they got a couple patches ago, they're a respectable handgun unit at 550. And normally handgun units break and run when they get targeted by things, but these guys are undead, so they will stay and fight, and they'll put some good DPS down. So next up, we're going to be heading over to my favorite faction to play these days, which is Nurgle. So for Nurgle, it's tricky. They don't have any unit that really stands out. Nurgle's a faction that, like, everybody works together. It's like a big symbiotic kind of nasty fungus growing. You know, they're all growing on each other and, you know, working together. But if I had to choose the best unit on the roster, I would probably say the Pestigore. Just Nurgle lack like speed and getting up to the objectives quickly. So having a Vanguard infantry unit with almost 40 movement speed that also can trade well is really nice. Pestigores, of course, do have Primal Fury. They have Tears of Nurgle, which is actually decent because it drains vigor and speed of nearby enemy units. But yeah, getting a high model count, high HP unit with Vanguard and Poison and good armor piercing up on the objective quickly is so damn good. So I think that hands down, the Pestigore is the best unit. There's a couple close contenders, but I think for now we can go with the Chad Pestigore. So now to the Sons of Sigmar for the Emperor. It is going to be the Free Company Militia, in my opinion. I think Free Company Militia are so cost effective. They're a unit you don't usually start with, but they give the Empire a ton of like momentum in the mid game, right? You call out like 3 or 4 Free Company Militia to push somebody in the mid game. Usually Empire sits back and value trades, and then you need to start pressing. And they're really good because they're 5 capture weight, they're respectable enough in melee to fight enemy infantry, and their shooting and moving and shooting is very good for like rushing objectives and bullying things. And you could even use them as a secondary missile piece unit. Like if you're playing a faction with Furies or a faction that can, you know, that you want to shoot at, but you're worried about their Air Force and their diving units, Free Company fill that role great against Vampire counts, against many Chaos factions, against Nurgle. They do some serious heavy lifting. So yeah, I think it's the Free Company Militia. Now, for the Demons of Chaos, I think the best unit is going to be the Fiends of Slaanesh. Now, obviously, Seekers and Heartseekers would probably be in that category, but in this list, we're not including bugged units. Like, there are units, of course, that are bugged and are just disgustingly broken because of that, but the Seekers and Heartseekers, yeah, it's not going to be included. Demons of Chaos, it's going to be Fiends of Slaanesh. And as we saw, the last faction war was won by Solasora, who is a multi-time major event winner, with Demons of Chaos, which and Demons of Chaos aren't even really considered to be like a top tier faction, but he really just put on a clinic with his Fiends, using their speed, their armor piercing to dictate a ton of the fights. They kind of functioned like Seekers that aren't like broken and they're fair. But yeah, the Fiends of Slaanesh are quite good. Between their Soporific Musk, their mobility, they just do a lot of damage, a lot of work, and they have Devastating Flanker as well, and Fizzraz, just a great unit. Fiends of Slaanesh are awesome, and I'm looking forward to the day when Seekers and Heartseekers get fixed. So I think that's every faction. I don't know, man. I'm getting old. I don't know. You guys have to let me know if I missed anything. But that is it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If there's any other subject matter you want me to talk about, just let me know and I'll do my best. I'm going to try and do some more of these type of videos. I think it's a lot of fun. And it's also good for newer players getting into the game to like get a grip of like, okay, I'm learning this faction. What are a couple of the units or the unit that I really should be kind of building around, right? But that is it. You guys take care of yourselves. Sigmar bless. Hopefully not Nurgle blessings for all of you. And that is going to be it for tonight. You guys take care of yourselves.